Hi, everybody. I am L. Brud Jones. This is Men on the Main Line, and this is the pre- and post-pandemic reads episode. During the pandemic, everyone sought ways to calm their nerves and have some fun alone. Books held me in good stead, as they always have, and I've got some reviews of books to share with you. And I think these are going to be titles you like if you're a man on the main line. Now, I read deep stuff. Books have been my friend since Dr. Seuss. He taught me about Hitler's ego, using Yertle the Turtle as king of the pond, and I read Julius Lester, who wrote Black Folk Tales. And then I got into Albert Murray's books. His train whistle guitar got into my hands, and soon after, his best friend Ralph Ellison's classic, Invisible Man, made it into my head. These books sounded to me like the comedians in my mother's record collection. My first love really was the voice, and voices of game show hosts and soap opera actors and cartoon characters or even Chitlin Circuit comedians actually filled my mind. I could not be happier than sitting under the dining room table, sneaking a listen to albums like The Devil Made Me Buy This Dress or Cowboys and Color People, where I could hear Flip Wilson doing a Geraldine who would put Martin Lawrence's Shanae or Tyler Perry's Medea to shame. He also would lampoon the historical journey of Columbus discovering America by explaining that the Indians were West Indians who told that explorer to discover his self back home. I mentioned the records and the performances to say that these were the voices I sought out in books. Plus, the books I read and liked often sent me back to the voices of my family or the voices of Black men and Black people. When the pandemic threatened and then hit like a terrible Hurricane Ian, it was the voices of Black writers on the page that gave me solace, and the concerns of their lives were the ones that I enjoyed reading about. So in this episode of Men on the Main Line, I have a few suggestions for books like that you might want to read. So the first is JayZ Made in America by Michael Eric Dyson, with a foreword by Pharrell and illustrations by Everett Dyson. Before his recent bars on the DJ Khaled single God's Plan, JayZ was actually sharing his insights on how to gain power and influence people and drawing the attention of the club scene and the academy. In 3 chapters on Hov's hustling, poetry, and politics, sociologist and theologian Michael Eric Dyson makes the case that Jay Hova is a rapper who has reached Horatio Alger level iconic status, going from Brooklyn drug dealing to legitimate billionaire businessman. And I say the book has a fun, opinionated discography, and it's impressive for its density, its eloquence, and its intertextuality. It puts this 50-plus-year-old husband of Beyonce in a cultural context for fans and scholars alike. It links JayZ's life and art to Basquiat, to Marvin Gaye, Walt Whitman, even Rita Dove. Stylistically, Dyson as the author rhymes himself. He uses alliteration. There's some Dysonisms in here, I'll call them. And he talks about JayZ's bright hustling and how that created a positive income stream. His blight hustling that hurt the community is even mentioned. He doesn't interview JayZ, but he does say he's a truth-telling racial unifier. He calls him a political influencer, a vocal evangelist for developing generational wealth in Black communities, Dyson writes. And he says JayZ represents a symbol of overcoming for hip-hop culture and larger American culture. Sometimes Dyson sounds like a fanboy, but one who refreshingly avoids bashing rap. Enough of the lyrics are quoted, some profound, some profane, some tame, and it lets readers decide for themselves. Another book is Breathe by Imani Perry. She's a Princeton award-winning professor. She's written books like Looking for Lorraine, and she's in the tradition of W.E.B. Du Bois, James Baldwin, Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is a letter to her sons who are Black boys, and she is encouraging them to stand up in the face of stumbling. It's a great book. It's voiced the way an African-American mom might say things when whites are not around. And it's told against the backdrop of police killings of Black men, notably Eric Garner, whose words, "I can't breathe," ring in the title. Perry's missive may echo a general American regret about the mismatch between black crime and black punishment. The author of numerous books, Imani Perry here, shares well-told and I'll call them funny memories of family trips to Alabama, Chicago, and Cambridge, and they signal a heritage and a privilege and innumerable gems from black cultural thinkers on perseverance. She gives a striking and generous admonition to thrive even in the face of white mendacity. And this book is also a meditation on parenting. It's reflective insights about injustice adjoin a few visceral apologies that every responsible parent would issue if they have any regrets. And that reminds parents of the divide between the deed of giving life, she says, and the social consequence of that deed. For black boys and their parents who struggle to get childhood and mothering along and fathering along right, she says, just always remember, even if you tumble, you must move towards freedom. Now, another book is more scrapbook than memoir. The Beautiful Ones has photos from the birth through the great artist Prince's 1980s heyday. It reminds readers how skilled and funky and glamorous the artist was till his death by accidental fentanyl overdose at home at the age of 57. It has a personal essay by Prince, plus captions and sidebars like quotes from a rare TV and early magazine interview. It recounts the adoration Prince had for greats like Santana and Sly Stone. It even talks about him blessing Beyonce and giving a side eye to Katy Perry and Ed Sheeran. Most touching in this book, though, are passages with the symbols that he used on his lyric sheets, like the number 2 or just a heart or just a symbol. There are revelations also in this book of deep love for his parents. He calls them the beautiful ones, and his namesake, his father, taught him the Batman theme on the piano. He divorced his mom, Maddie, and then accepted Prince as a 12-year-old into his apartment when his mom remarried. Treats in the book are handwritten lyric sheets to hits like The Beautiful Ones, the song, or Dirty Mind, or Little Red Corvette. And there's even an 11-page treatment of the film Purple Rain that wraps up the book's contents. There is royal weirdness too. Prince required a proposal letter plus a flight to Australia from New York City, holding Piping Bring up in a hotel room with a stack of draft memoir pages for feedback. Prince was next door, uncommunicative. Finally trusted, Pipe and Bring must be aggressive about book advances, getting paid, an early marketing strategy before The Beautiful Ones is even outlined. Prince died 3 months later, so The Beautiful Ones is an altar candle lit in the wake of an icon's passing. It's at turns affecting and raw. It's the effort of a co-author / acolyte who was actually not allowed to take notes or record the conversations he had with Prince. The Beautiful Ones centers on the black icon successfully, and it's a pretty good book, unlike, say, some other memoirs or biographies like The Fight about Muhammad Ali by Norman Mailer, to whom Prince compares his chosen co-writer, Pipe and Bring. It suffers, though, as a dance of unequals, I would say. JayZ's Decoded with Dream Hampton is actually more reflective about lyrics and musical processes that artists use. I Am, Brian Wilson, with Bob Greenman, is autobiographically richer than this. Pairing The Beautiful Ones with Morris Day's memoir by David Ritz, that's on the group The Time, that came out in 2019, actually yields insights over exposition. It has things like, Prince is the first word in my book. Our bond got strong, then changed to strange. And strange changed to strained. Even though he's gone, he's still here. I still hear his voice in my head. I can't write this book without his voice, Morris Day says. And he whispers things like, no one really knows me, but I'm the one cat who wasn't scared to tell you what I thought. And in this book, that won't change. It's going to be true to you and true to me. And Morris Day continues, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe That's why you kept me around. So that's in Morris Day's memoir that includes information about Prince, and it's a little better. The next book is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Now, this has gotten a lot of publicity. It's an excellent read, and it's also got some challenges, I would say. While admirably fit for agitating discussion, some of the terms in the book are confusing and kind of feel labored, like Kendi's hyphenated identifiers throughout the book. And his descriptions of his life in Queens and New York and Manassas, Virginia, and in Philly also seem kind of structured to set himself up as proof of his sociological declaratives. Now, Kendi does successfully model self-examination and inspires readers to consider whether ignorance or self-interest actually does, really drive racist policies into reality. And I think it's important as a book to be read. I think it's important as a book to be taught. I'm a professor at Valley Forge Military College, hence my ID today and my lanyard. And I think that it's important for us to talk about the things in literature classes, in rhetoric classes, and elsewhere that are current, on the minds of people, and going to move conversations forward, especially conversations that would bring people together if there's understanding about where different people are coming from. How to Be an Anti-Racist can be one of those books, along with Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. The subtitle is Combat Racism, Change the World, and Become a Good Ancestor. Both of these texts, I think, are important ones, along with one more I'll mention, which is another by Imani Perry called May We Forever Stand. It's a history of the Black national anthem, but it also helps us understand schools for African Americans, especially in the 20th century, that use the Black national anthem, May We Forever Stand, Lift Every Voice, as an inspirational piece along with the Star Spangled Banner. And so I think the reading of texts like this can advance dialogue amongst people who want to understand one another. And I think Ibram X. Kendi has played an important role before, during, and after the pandemic in advancing this particular kind of conversation. These discussions are really important today, and there are various authors, not just African-American authors, who contributed to the conversation, at least as it goes on in my head. Again, during the pandemic, before the pandemic, and right after, I spent a lot of time with these books in order to comfort myself and in order to educate myself. One of the authors who's been great about writing about race has been Jonathan Coleman. He's a best-selling author from the 1980s till now. He's written books like Exit the Rainmaker and At Mother's Request, which was turned into a TV miniseries. And more recently, he's written West by West, which is the memoir of basketball legend Jerry West, which Jonathan Coleman co-writes. Now, he's written a text about race called Long Way to Go, Black and White in America. I happen to be in this one. If you look in the index, you'll find my name. And if you look on those few pages, you'll find out what kind of student I was when I was in school. So I'm going to put this one away. But it's really an important text if we are going to talk about race relations in the 90s and the 2000s, because it contextualizes the impulse in the post-integration era to join together, and then some of the reluctance to continue those efforts because some of the policies that people wanted didn't come into reality. But when you think about the topic, these are great books, along with Ford's book, Think Black. Now, as Ford seeks to contextualize his father's and his own time as minority hires at IBM, Clyde Ford includes too few things that are fleshed out personal anecdotes among a lot of footnoted summaries of other books about IBM and its famed chair, Thomas J. Wilson, who actually personally hired Ford's father. Now, Ford contrasts Watson's bringing his father on board with IBM's involvement with such racist horrors as eugenics, the Holocaust, and apartheid, and that's interesting. Less convincingly presented, though, are Ford's views on how the atmosphere at IBM impacted his father or himself, and the dynamics of institutional racism that Thinking Black apparently helped them fend off. So it's a good book. It's got some good anecdotes, but it's also got a few flaws. All of these texts that I've got here reflect my own interests, reflect the interest that I have in African American social and political thought, culture, sports, entertainment, and the things that I think provide scaffolding for conversations that are really important for us to have, and conversations that, quite frankly, I was having sometimes with myself, other times with family members, and other times with colleagues at the college where I work and students that I teach. At the end of the day, I just want to encourage everybody to read. Read what you love. Read about African American history, social political thought, culture. Read about music. Listen to the music that you love while you're reading about it. Anything that you can do to connect the things you think about to a rich text can only enrich your life. This edition of Men on the Main Line has been just me, obviously, and the books that I love. There'll be other episodes where I'll continue to talk with people in our community who are doing fantastic things. But that ends it for today. I just hope you'll also go about collecting your own stack, continuing to read the things that give you joy, make you think, and read the things that you want to share with other people. If I come across more books that I want to recommend to you, I'll surely bring them. But for now, that's it for this edition of Men on the Main Line. I'm still L. Bruh Jones, and thanks for watching once again.